The night of the mating ritual was supposed to decide who would stand beside Alpha King Kael Draven. 12 daughters of powerful families waited beneath silver lanterns, each surrounded by relatives who had spent years preparing alliances. The kingdom expected Kael to choose a woman whose bloodline could strengthen his throne. No one expected him to choose a servant. Lyra Vale had no intention of being noticed. For 18 years, she had survived by becoming invisible. She knew which corridors belonged to nobles, when to lower her eyes, and how to work through exhaustion without asking for anything. She had never been invited to ceremonies. She had never stood near the royal circle. Tonight, curiosity simply defeated common sense. She slipped into the forest and hid behind an ancient oak. From there, she could see everything. Kael stood in the center of the ritual circle, wearing black ceremonial armor. He was known throughout the Northern Territories as a ruthless Alpha King, a man who had ended rebellions without mercy and political disputes without hesitation. Yet as each noble woman approached him, he felt nothing. The priestess raised her hands. The first woman stepped forward. Kael did not react. The second, nothing. The third, nothing. Then Lyra inhaled. The smallest breath. Kael's head turned. His golden eyes locked on the forest. The priestess stopped speaking. Kael drew in another breath. Warm rain. Wildflowers. Pine after a storm. His wolf surged awake. Mate. Kael lifted one hand. Stop the ritual. Gasps moved through the clearing. He walked away from the 12 noble women and toward the trees. Lyra panicked. She ran. She tore through the undergrowth, branches catching her sleeves. She did not stop until the castle lights disappeared behind her. Then she looked back. Kael stood at the edge of the clearing. He had found her scent. He had not yet seen her face clearly. Lyra thought that meant she was safe. She was wrong. Because the next morning, the Alpha King entered the servants' courtyard and searched every face. And when his golden eyes found Lyra, the expression on his face told her that her invisible life was over. The ritual had been designed to make choice look inevitable. Each noble family had rehearsed where its daughter would stand, when she would bow, and what expression she should wear if the Alpha King touched her hand. Lyra had watched from the shadows and realized how different her life was. No one had ever rehearsed anything for her. She had never been taught how to become important. Yet when Kael stopped, all that preparation became meaningless. His wolf had ignored wealth, lineage, and ceremony. It had recognized something beneath all of them. Lyra did not know that the silver glow she had seen in the wounded fox was already connected to the same ancient force. For years, the power had remained dormant because she had never been asked to use it. Fear had taught her to suppress every unusual instinct. She had thought the strange moments were simply dreams, hearing animals before they appeared, sensing storms before clouds gathered, knowing when someone nearby was afraid. Now those memories returned one by one. The forest had not merely carried her scent to Kael. It had answered her presence. Lyra had never understood why the forest calmed her. When she was a child, she used to slip away from the servants' courtyard and sit beside the river until someone came looking for her. Animals had always approached her there. Birds stopped singing when she was frightened. Stray dogs slept beside her without being called. Once, years earlier, she had touched a dying rabbit and watched it breathe normally again. She had dismissed the memory as a childhood fantasy. Now she wondered whether it had been the first sign. Kael's reaction made her question everything she had been told about herself. The following afternoon, the Alpha King summoned the High Priestess privately. He asked whether a mate bond could be mistaken. Not a true one, she answered. Could magic imitate it? Magic can imitate attraction. It cannot create the silence your wolf experiences when it recognizes its other half. Kael looked toward the window. And if the woman does not know what she is, then someone has probably made sure she never learned. The answer stayed with him. Meanwhile, Lyra found an old silver mark scratched into the wooden frame of her childhood bed. She had never noticed it before. The symbol looked like a crescent wrapped around a wolf's eye. She touched it. For one heartbeat, she heard a woman's voice. Run. Lyra pulled her hand away. She did not know who the woman was, but she knew the voice had belonged to someone who had once been afraid for her life. By breakfast, the entire castle was whispering. The mating ritual had been interrupted. The Alpha King had walked away from 12 noble candidates. He had sensed an unknown woman in the forest. Some servants called her a witch. Others believed she was an assassin. Lyra said nothing. Her closest friend, Milo, watched her over a bowl of porridge. You know something? I know that people should mind their own business. You are terrible at lying. Lyra almost smiled. Then the courtyard doors opened. Kael entered. He did not announce why he was there. He simply walked among the servants, studying faces. Lyra stepped backward. Kael stopped. Their eyes met. His wolf recognized her instantly. Lyra felt a strange warmth move through her chest. For one heartbeat, she heard something impossible beneath the courtyard noise. A wolf's heartbeat. Not Kael's. Hundreds of them. She blinked, and the sound disappeared. Kael noticed her reaction. You. Lyra lowered her eyes. My lord. Come with me. She followed because refusing an Alpha King was dangerous. But inside his chambers, Kael did something she did not expect. He closed the door and stepped away from her. I will not force you. Lyra looked up. Then why am I here? Because I need to understand what happened. I watched the ritual. Why? Because I had never seen one. Kael studied her. You were afraid. Of you. His expression changed. I was afraid too. That answer unsettled her more than a command would have. Kael explained the mate bond. His wolf had recognized her before he had understood what he was sensing. Lyra shook her head. It cannot be me. Why? Because I am a servant. That is your position. It is not your worth. She looked away. No one has ever asked what I wanted. Kael's voice softened. Then I am asking now. Lyra did not know how to answer. Before she could, a bell rang through the castle. The noble council had summoned the Alpha King. Lady Evelyn Voss, head of the council, had heard enough to know her family's plans were collapsing. Her daughter Celeste had been one of the 12 women in the ritual, and Evelyn intended to make certain that a servant girl did not replace her. Kael spent the morning dealing with the political consequences, but he could not stop thinking about the moment his wolf had reacted. He had been trained since childhood to separate instinct from judgment. An alpha who surrendered every decision to his wolf could become dangerous. Yet denying the bond felt equally wrong. He needed to learn whether Lyra wanted the same future. Lyra, meanwhile, returned to work because routine was the only thing she trusted. She scrubbed silver trays, carried breakfast, and listened to servants whisper about the mysterious mate. Every ordinary task felt strangely unreal. She was still wearing gray, but people now looked at her differently. Milo eventually found her alone near the pantry. You know this is going to change everything. I know. Are you afraid? Yes. Of the king. Lyra thought about Kael's careful distance. No. I am afraid of what happens if I start believing him. Milo understood. Believing someone powerful could love her meant risking the possibility that the world might take him away. Lyra had survived by expecting abandonment. Hope was much more dangerous than loneliness. Kael began changing the way he approached Lyra. He could have ordered her to move into the royal wing immediately. Instead, he asked what would make her feel safe. She answered honestly. A door I can lock from the inside. He arranged for one. A room where servants can enter without being questioned. He arranged for that too. And no guards outside my door unless I ask. Kael hesitated, then nodded. The requests seemed small to him, but to Lyra they were enormous. They were proof that he was listening. One evening, Kael found her in the library reading an old book about northern folklore. You read? Poorly. That is not what I asked. Lyra smiled. I was never taught properly. He sat opposite her. Then teach me what you know. I know how to clean silver. That is not what I meant. She closed the book. I know how to survive. Kael's expression softened. Then perhaps you can teach me that. She laughed. You are the Alpha King, and I still have things to learn. Their conversations became longer. Attraction grew quietly, through small things rather than declarations. Kael remembered how she took her tea. Lyra noticed when he had not slept. He learned to remove his crown before entering the servants' wing because it made everyone nervous. One night, Lyra asked why he had never married before. Kael answered, because everyone who approached me wanted the crown. And what do you think I want? He looked at her. I am still trying to find out. Lyra smiled. Good. Good. That means you are finally asking. Lady Evelyn entered the council chamber with 6 elders behind her. You abandoned a sacred ritual. I followed my mate. You humiliated 12 noble families. I did not choose the outcome. You could have chosen differently. Kael leaned back. No. The room fell silent. Evelyn had spent decades controlling political marriages, trade alliances, and succession negotiations. She believed an Alpha King could command everything except perhaps death. She had not expected him to refuse her. This servant has no family. That does not matter. She has no political value. Neither does your argument. Evelyn's eyes hardened. You are risking the kingdom for a girl you met in a forest. Kael stood. I am refusing to sell my life for an alliance. The council adjourned in anger. Lyra heard about the confrontation later and felt guilty. I am causing this. Kael shook his head. You are not responsible for other people's choices. But you could lose your throne. I could. And you are not afraid? I am. She stared at him. Then why? Kael looked at her. Because fear is not a good reason to betray yourself. That was the first moment Lyra began to see the man beneath the crown. Their relationship grew slowly. Kael did not demand her presence. He asked. He did not order her to speak. He listened. He began visiting the servants' wing, which created even more gossip. Lyra learned that Kael hated sweet wine, loved riding before sunrise, and could never sleep after a battle. Kael learned that Lyra collected tiny blue stones from the river, loved old stories, and secretly fed stray animals near the kitchens. One evening, she found a wounded fox beneath the stairs. When she touched it, the animal stopped trembling. A faint silver glow appeared beneath her fingers. Lyra pulled away. The fox's wound had closed. Kael had witnessed it. How long have you been able to do that? I didn't know I could. His expression became serious. Neither understood what it meant. But the high priestess, watching from the distant corridor, did. And for the first time in 20 years, she whispered a name no one in the kingdom was supposed to remember. Moonborn. Celeste was not the enemy Lyra expected. When they finally spoke privately, Celeste admitted that she had spent her entire childhood being prepared for a role she never wanted. Her mother had chosen her clothes, friends, tutors, and even the way she should speak to the Alpha King. I thought you hated me, Lyra said. Celeste shook her head. I envied you. Lyra almost laughed. Me? You can say no. Can I? Celeste looked at her. You are the first person I have met who was willing to walk away from the palace. That conversation changed the shape of the conflict. Lyra realized that the kingdom had created different kinds of cages. Servants were trapped by poverty. Noble daughters were trapped by expectations. Omegas were trapped by traditions. Even the Alpha King was trapped by the belief that a ruler could never admit uncertainty. Kael overheard none of this. He was in the council chamber fighting for Lyra's right to exist without being displayed as political property. When he returned, Lyra told him what Celeste had said. Kael was silent. Then he said, Perhaps the kingdom does not need a new queen. Perhaps it needs new rules. Lyra smiled. Now you are thinking like a king. Lady Evelyn realized that direct attacks were making Kael more protective, so she changed tactics. She began praising Lyra in public. At the next council gathering, Evelyn said, Perhaps the servant should be honored. After all, the king has clearly become fascinated by her. The compliment was an insult. It suggested Lyra was a novelty rather than a mate. Lyra felt every noble eye turned toward her. Kael started to speak. She stopped him. I can answer. He allowed her. Lyra stepped forward. I do not need to be honored for surviving. The chamber quieted. I need to be treated like a person. Evelyn smiled. And what makes you think you deserve that? Lyra looked around the room. Because everyone else in this room assumes they do. No one spoke. Celeste lowered her eyes to hide a smile. Afterward, Kael found Lyra in the corridor. You did not need to defend yourself. I know. Then why? Because if you keep speaking for me, they will never learn to listen to me. Kael nodded. Fair. It was another small lesson for him. That night, he apologized. Lyra accepted. Their relationship became stronger because neither was trying to win every argument. They were learning how to disagree without leaving. The next attack came from Milo. He was carrying messages through the lower corridor when 3 guards stopped him. You helped the servant reach the Alpha King's chambers. I carried nothing but laundry. One guard shoved him. Lyra heard the noise and ran. Leave him alone. A guard grabbed her wrist. Kael arrived seconds later. His wolf rose behind his eyes. Release her. The guard obeyed. Kael stood between Lyra and the men. Anyone watching could see the danger in him. But when he turned to Lyra, his voice softened. Are you hurt? No. You disobeyed me. You told me to stay away from trouble. I did. I tried. He almost smiled. Later, Lyra confronted him. You cannot keep saving me. I know. Then why do you keep doing it? Because I care about you. She looked at him. I don't want protection that becomes another cage. Kael went quiet. That sentence struck him harder than any accusation. He had been so focused on keeping her safe that he had not noticed how easily protection could become control. I am sorry. Lyra did not expect that. Kael continued. I will protect you when you ask. I will stand beside you when you need me. But I will not decide your life for you. Their bond changed after that. Not because the magic became stronger. Because trust did. But Lady Evelyn had already begun preparing a counterattack. She produced documents accusing Lyra of forbidden magic. Then she produced witnesses claiming Lyra had manipulated the mating ritual. The accusations spread. Kael challenged them publicly. Evelyn smiled. She did not need to defeat him in battle. She needed to make the kingdom believe he had been enchanted. Then Celeste approached Lyra secretly. I need to tell you something. Lyra followed her into an empty chapel. Celeste looked terrified. My mother is planning something worse than a political marriage. What? A forced mate bond. Lyra stared. Celeste swallowed. She believes if the natural bond cannot be controlled, it can be replaced. With what? With blood magic. The chapel candles flickered. Lyra suddenly understood that the mating ritual had never been the real danger. It had only been the beginning. The accusation against Lyra became more dangerous because it contained a small piece of truth. She did have unusual abilities. The council simply did not know what they were. Evelyn exploited that uncertainty. She arranged for a servant to claim that Lyra had caused a candle to explode. Another witness said Lyra had spoken to wolves. A third claimed she had placed a spell on Kael. Each story was absurd, but together they created fear. Kael wanted to expose the lies immediately. Lyra stopped him. If you deny everything without understanding my power, they will only say you are protecting me. What do you suggest? Find the truth. The high priestess was summoned. She examined Lyra without touching her. Then she noticed the silver stones Lyra carried from the river. Where did you get these? I found them when I was a child. The priestess's face changed. These are moonborn stones. Kael looked at Lyra. What does that mean? It means someone has been hiding the truth about her for a very long time. Before the priestess could explain more, the guards arrived with the arrest order. The timing was too perfect. Someone had known they were getting close to the truth. The high priestess finally told Kael that the moonborn bloodline had once served as guardians of the mate bond. Moonborn women could sense when a bond was becoming coercive. Their power did not command wolves. It restored balance. Then why was Lyra hidden? Kael asked. Because powerful people wanted to use her blood. Who? The priestess hesitated. Your father's council. Kael went still. His father had ruled 20 years earlier. He remembered stories about a woman accused of stealing forbidden magic. He had been a child. He had never known her name. The high priestess finally said it. Lyra Vale. Lyra's mother. Kael realized the conspiracy was older than Evelyn. It had begun before he became king. He went to Lyra, but he did not tell her everything immediately. Instead, he asked about her earliest memory. Fire, she said. A forest. Yes. A woman. Lyra closed her eyes. She was holding me. What did she say? She told me not to trust the people who called themselves protectors. Kael felt a chill. His father had always called the old council protectors. Now he wondered what they had actually protected. Not the kingdom. Their power. The discovery gave the story a deeper danger. Evelyn was not creating the conspiracy. She was inheriting it. Lyra was arrested before dawn. Lady Evelyn arrived with a council order. Sedition. Forbidden magic. Interference with the sacred ritual. Lyra knew every charge was false. She was taken to the old dungeon. Kael was away negotiating with 2 hostile packs when it happened. The door closed. For the first time, Lyra felt truly alone. Hours later, Celeste appeared beyond the bars. My mother found an ancient ritual. What does it require? A ceremonial circle, blood, and a sacrifice. Lyra's face went pale. Who is the sacrifice? Celeste could barely speak. Me. Lyra understood. Evelyn did not simply want Celeste to become queen. She wanted to use her own daughter as the key to control the Alpha King. Why are you telling me? Because I never wanted to be queen. Celeste reached through the bars. I thought if I obeyed her, she would finally love me. Lyra took her hand. That is not love. Celeste began to cry. No, it is control. Something changed inside Lyra. The word echoed through her mind. Control. She remembered Kael telling her that his wolf could want something, but he still had to choose. Then the dungeon lights flickered. A distant howl passed through the stone. Lyra heard another. Then another. Suddenly, She could hear every wolf in the forest. Fear, pain, anger, hope. The silver glow returned beneath her skin. The iron door cracked. Lyra stepped back. The door exploded outward. She ran. Outside, Kael was already there. He had torn through the castle guard to reach the dungeon. He pulled her into his arms. I thought I lost you. Lyra held him. I thought you had forgotten me. Never. Rowan Hale, captain of the royal guard, arrived. My king, the council is calling for your removal. Kael looked toward the castle. If I return without her, they will use her against me. Lyra shook her head. Then do not choose between me and the kingdom. Kael looked at her. We face them together. Lyra nodded. But before they could return, a howl erupted from the forest. Celeste was missing, and Lady Evelyn had begun the forced ritual. In the dungeon, Lyra expected fear to overwhelm her. Instead, she felt strangely calm. She could hear the wolves beyond the walls. One was injured. Another was frightened. A third was angry. Their emotions flowed through her like distant voices. She placed her hand against the stone. The silver glow appeared again. The injured wolf outside stopped whimpering. Lyra realized her power was not about domination. It responded to suffering. That distinction would matter later. When Celeste told her about the sacrifice, Lyra understood why Evelyn wanted the ritual. A force bond would not only control Kael. It would turn the ancient mate system into a weapon. Kael arrived before Lyra could fully understand her power. For a moment, she almost collapsed from relief. But she also noticed the blood on his sleeve. You fought your way here. Yes. You could have been killed. So could you. She looked at him. Then perhaps we are both terrible at staying safe. He smiled despite himself. It was the first moment of lightness after the dungeon. Then Rowan delivered the council's ultimatum. Kael's throne was threatened. Lyra expected him to choose the crown. Instead, he said, we go back together. She answered, together. When Lyra was arrested, Kael was forced to confront the cost of being king. He could storm the dungeon and rescue her. But if he did, the council would call it proof that she controlled him. So he chose a harder path. He gathered evidence. He questioned guards. He examined the forged documents. He discovered that 3 witnesses had been paid. One had disappeared. Another had been threatened. The third finally confessed. Evelyn had ordered everything. But Kael still could not find the original evidence of the Moonborn bloodline. Then Rowan brought him a sealed letter. It had belonged to Kael's father. The letter contained one sentence. If the girl survives, never allow the council to place a crown on her head. Her freedom is more important than our throne. Kael read it twice. His father had known, and he had failed to stop what came next. Kael finally understood what the old king had feared. The Moonborn was not dangerous because she could control wolves. She was dangerous to people who depended on controlling wolves. When Kael reached Lyra, he told her the truth. Your mother was not a criminal. Lyra's eyes filled. Then why did everyone say she was? Because someone needed you to believe you had no family. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to grieve for a mother she barely remembered. They reached the old mating ritual clearing beneath a moonless sky. Celeste was bound inside the ancient circle. Lady Evelyn stood over her with the ceremonial blade. You were supposed to be grateful. Celeste's voice shook. I was supposed to be your daughter. You were supposed to be queen. I never wanted your crown. Evelyn raised the blade. Kael stepped into the clearing. Put it down. Evelyn smiled. Your wolf chose the wrong woman. I am correcting its mistake. Lyra stepped forward. Let her go. Evelyn turned. You are the reason my daughter will never be queen. No. Lyra looked at Celeste. Your mother is the reason. Evelyn attacked. Lyra entered the circle. The moment her foot touched the markings, silver light erupted beneath her. The forest answered. Wolves howled in every direction. Evelyn froze. What are you? Lyra did not know. Then the high priestess arrived with Rowan and several guards. Her eyes widened. Moonborn. The word echoed through the clearing. Evelyn backed away. The Moonborn bloodline was destroyed. No, the high priestess said. It was hidden. Lyra stared at her. You knew? I knew your mother. The truth could wait. Celeste was still trapped. Evelyn lunged again. Lyra grabbed the ceremonial blade. She did not want to hurt her. But when Evelyn attacked, Lyra struck her shoulder. Evelyn fell. The blade dropped. Lyra immediately stepped back. I did not want to do that. Kael approached. I know. Celeste was freed. Then she faced the witnesses. My mother planned this. She told them everything. the forged accusations, the forced bond, the blood ritual, the sacrifice. Evelyn screamed that Celeste was lying. But the ancient circle was already glowing. The high priestess looked at the markings. This ritual was prepared before Lyra ever entered the forest. Kael's expression changed. So the accusation was planned from the beginning. The conspiracy was larger than they had imagined. Evelyn's ritual was designed around an ancient misunderstanding. She believed a mate bond existed to make an alpha powerful through ownership. The original Moonborn tradition had been created for the opposite reason. The Moonborn could calm the bond when it became possessive, allowing both partners to retain their will. That was why Evelyn feared Lyra. A woman who could break a forced bond could destroy the political system Evelyn had spent decades building. Inside the ritual circle, Lyra felt the ancient magic pulling at her. It wanted obedience. It wanted one command. It wanted Kael to claim her and Celeste to submit. Lyra resisted, not with greater force, with refusal. "I will not own you," she whispered. Kael heard her. "And I will not own you." The circle cracked. Evelyn panicked. She had expected the strongest wolf to win. She had never considered that freedom could be stronger than force. Celeste broke free enough to reach the ceremonial bell. She rang it 3 times. The sound carried across the valley. Witnesses began arriving. Evelyn's private ritual became a public crime. There was no longer any way to hide what she had done. At the forced ritual, Evelyn tried to exploit Lyra's grief. "Your mother abandoned you," she said. Lyra shook. The words hurt because they touched the deepest wound she carried. Kael stepped toward her, but Lyra raised her hand. "No." She faced Evelyn herself. "You do not get to use my mother to control me." The Moonborn power rose. Not as an explosion. As silence. Every wolf in the forest stopped moving. The ancient circle began to crack. Evelyn's expression changed. She finally understood that Lyra's greatest power was not magic. It was the refusal to obey fear. Celeste broke the binding around her wrist and reached the bell. 3 strikes. Then another. Guards appeared. Nobles arrived. Servants came from the lower paths. The secret ritual became a public witness. Evelyn tried to command the Alpha guards. No one obeyed. Kael looked at them. "Your choice." One by one, they lowered their weapons. The old system began to collapse in real time. Not because Kael commanded it, because people finally realized they were allowed to refuse. The council chamber became the final battlefield. Lady Evelyn was brought before the elders. She accused Lyra of using Moonborn magic to control Kael. The high priestess interrupted. "That is impossible." She placed her hands over the bond between Kael and Lyra. Silver light appeared. It did not force them together. It simply revealed what was already there. The bond formed naturally. Evelyn shook her head. Then why was she hidden? The high priestess answered. "Because her mother hid her to save her." Lyra turned. "My mother?" The high priestess explained that 20 years earlier, Lyra's mother had been hunted because the Moonborn could influence the ancient wolf magic that governed mate bonds. Evelyn's faction had wanted that power. Lyra's mother had escaped with her child. She had vanished. Lyra had been left at the castle because it was the one place where no one would think to search for a powerless servant. Lyra's entire life had been built around a lie designed to keep her alive. Kael looked at her. "You were never nobody." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "I believed it." "I know." Evelyn made one final attempt. "If the Moonborn is allowed to stand beside the king, she will control the kingdom." Lyra stepped forward. "No." Everyone looked at her. "I do not want to control anyone." She looked at Kael. "I do not even want to control him." Kael smiled. "Good." Lyra continued. "I want the freedom to choose." The high priestess nodded. "That is why the Moonborn was feared." The old prophecy was finally revealed. The Moonborn would not rule wolves. She would break the ancient magic that turned bonds into chains. Evelyn's plan had been the exact opposite of the prophecy. She wanted control. Lyra represented freedom. The council stripped Evelyn of her position. Celeste was freed from her mother's influence. But Kael still faced a choice. The council demanded that he publicly claim Lyra. Kael refused. Instead, he turned to her. "I will not claim you." Lyra stared. "I choose you," he continued. "But I need you to choose me." For the first time, Lyra understood the true meaning of their bond. The council's final hearing revealed that Evelyn had manipulated more than the mating ritual. She had quietly pressured noble families for years, promising their daughters access to the throne in exchange for loyalty. She had controlled appointments, silenced servants, and used old laws to remove anyone who challenged her influence. Lyra listened without triumph. She understood now that Evelyn's greatest weakness was not cruelty. It was fear. Evelyn was terrified of losing control. The High Priestess explained the Moonborn prophecy carefully. It did not promise that Lyra would become queen. It promised that one Moonborn would appear when the mate's system became corrupted, and that her role would be to restore free will. Kael looked at Lyra. You were never meant to be my possession. No, you were meant to remind me that I am still responsible for my choices. Lyra smiled. And you reminded me that I can make choices too. The council members voted. Evelyn lost her title. Her network was dismantled. Celeste was released from every political obligation her mother had imposed. But the council then asked Kael to claim Lyra publicly. Kael refused. He turned to Lyra instead. If you choose me, I will stand with you. That was the moment the prophecy became real. The council hearing lasted until midnight. Every accusation was examined. Every forged document was exposed. Celeste testified. The High Priestess testified. The guards testified. Then Lyra was asked to speak. She could have demanded Evelyn's execution. Instead, she said, I want the laws changed. The elders were surprised. Lyra continued, if you punish one woman but leave the system untouched, another will do the same thing. Kael watched her with pride. She was not asking for revenge. She was asking for prevention. The council agreed to reform the mating ritual. No family could nominate a mate for political advantage. No alpha could be pressured to choose. No omega could be forced into a bond. And any ritual involving blood magic would be treated as a crime against the kingdom. Then the High Priestess revealed the final part of the prophecy. The Moonborn does not become queen because fate chooses her. She looked at Lyra. She becomes a guardian because she chooses freedom. Kael stood. I will not claim Lyra. The council objected. He continued. I will ask her. He turned to Lyra. Will you stand beside me? Lyra looked at the crown, then at the man beneath it. Only if you stand beside me too. Kael smiled. That is the only way I want it. The kingdom expected a royal wedding. Kael refused to give them one. Instead, he asked Lyra to leave the castle with him for 3 days. They rode north to the lake where Kael had spent his childhood. There were no guards nearby, no council, no priestess, no political expectations. Just the two of them. I thought you would ask me to marry you, Lyra said. I wanted to. Why didn't you? Because I needed to know you could say no. She smiled. And if I do, I will still love you. That answer broke something open inside her. For years, love had always sounded like a bargain. Work harder. Be quieter. Be useful. Then perhaps someone would keep you. Kael asked for nothing. That made her choose him. They returned to the castle after 3 days. The public ceremony was held beneath the same silver lanterns where their story had begun. This time, Lyra did not hide behind a tree. She walked into the circle willingly. The High Priestess tied a silver cord around their joined hands. 3 knots were made. Trust. Choice. Future. Then she asked Lyra the question no one had asked her before. Do you choose this bond? Lyra looked at Kael. I do. The hall erupted. But Lyra barely heard the applause. She heard the quiet voice inside herself. You are allowed to choose. Kael looked at her. I love you. Lyra smiled. I love you too. The bond warmed. Not like a chain. Like a door opening. After the ceremony, Lyra returned to the servants' wing. She stood outside the tiny alcove where she had slept for years. Kael waited beside her. It is smaller than I remember. It was always small. Lyra smiled. But it kept me alive. Kael took her hand. You survived it. She looked at him. No. She smiled. I survived myself. That was the beginning of her new life. The 3 days away from the castle were important because neither Kael nor Lyra could hide behind their roles. At the lake, he was not the Alpha King. She was not the servant. They cooked simple food. They argued about which horse was faster. Lyra teased him for burning the first meal. Kael admitted he had never cooked anything without servants nearby. They laughed. Then, at sunset, Lyra asked the question she had been afraid to ask. What if the bond is wrong? Kael looked at the water. Then we are still 2 people who met. And if we are not mates, I would still want to know you. Lyra cried quietly. Not because she was sad. Because no one had ever made her feel that she was worth knowing without a title attached. When they returned, the public ceremony meant something different. It was not proof that destiny had chosen them. It was proof that they had chosen each other after seeing the truth. The 3 days at the lake gave Lyra something she had never possessed: time without expectation. Kael showed her the place where he had learned to swim as a boy. He admitted he had once fallen into the water wearing ceremonial armor. Lyra laughed until she cried. He looked offended. You find my suffering amusing? Very. They cooked together. Kael burned the bread. Lyra burned the second loaf. They decided the royal kitchen staff had been hiding important information from them. For 3 days, they were simply two people. On the final evening, Lyra asked, if there were no bond, would you still choose me? Kael did not answer immediately. He looked at the lake, then at her. Yes. She cried. He did not touch her until she reached for him. That mattered. When they returned, Lyra understood that the public ceremony was not an obligation. It was a celebration. She wanted it. Not because the kingdom expected it. Because she did. The kingdom changed slowly. Celeste joined the council and began rewriting the laws governing servants and omegas. Milo became a royal messenger. The high priestess taught Lyra to control her moonborn abilities. Kael began visiting the lower districts instead of governing only from the throne. But Lyra's greatest lesson was not political. It was personal. She had spent 18 years believing that being chosen was the highest form of validation. Now she understood something different. Being chosen mattered, but choosing mattered more. One afternoon, Kael found her in the training yard. She was practicing a protective barrier. Silver light surrounded her hands. You are getting stronger. So are you. He raised an eyebrow. I have always been strong. Lyra smiled. That is exactly the problem. He laughed. Then his expression softened. Do you regret coming into the forest? Lyra thought about the question. I regret being afraid. Of me. Of being seen. Kael stepped closer. I see you now. I know. And if you ever want to leave? I know. He nodded. That was enough. Their bond no longer needed constant proof. It had become trust. Meanwhile, Lady Evelyn's trial continued. Her crimes were exposed. Her political network collapsed. But Lyra refused to ask for revenge. She asked for reform. Punishment will not stop another woman from doing this. Kael listened. What will? Changing the system that made her believe she could. The council accepted the proposal. For the first time, Lyra understood that becoming powerful did not mean becoming like the people who had hurt her. It meant using power differently. That became the foundation of her future. After the ceremony, Lyra refused to move into the largest royal suite immediately. She asked to spend one more night in the servants' wing. Kael agreed. She wanted to remember the sounds of that place. The footsteps before dawn. The clatter of dishes. The whispered jokes. The exhaustion. She did not romanticize the hardship. She simply refused to erase it. Milo brought her tea. Celeste came without guards. They sat together on the floor. I never imagined this, Milo said. Neither did I, Lyra answered. Celeste smiled. Then perhaps that is the point. The next morning, Lyra moved into the royal wing. But she kept her old key. Not because she planned to return to the alcove. Because she wanted to remember that a door could be opened from either side. Kael understood immediately. He never asked her to forget who she had been. He asked her to decide who she would become. The new ceremony was deliberately smaller than the original mating ritual. There were no 12 candidates. No families competing. No political promises. Only the people who mattered. The servants stood beside the nobles. Celeste stood beside Lyra. Milo stood beside Rowan. The high priestess held the silver cord. Before tying it, she asked Kael the first question. Do you choose her freely? I do. She turned to Lyra. Do you choose him freely? Lyra looked at Kael. I do. The cord was tied. 3 knots. Trust. Choice. Future. The bond responded. But this time Lyra did not feel trapped. She felt expanded, as though the world had become larger rather than smaller. Kael whispered, you can still change your mind. Lyra smiled. I know. And I am not changing it. That was the moment the story completed its promise. The Alpha King had stopped the first ritual because of her scent. The woman he had found there now stood beside him because she wanted to. 1 year after the mating ritual, Lyra returned to the forest. Kael followed. They stopped beneath the ancient oak, the same tree where she had hidden. Lyra laughed. I cannot believe I was foolish enough to do this. Kael smiled. You were curious. I was terrified. You ran very fast. I thought you were going to arrest me. I thought you were going to disappear. She looked at him. I almost did. But you came back. Because you gave me a choice. Kael took her hand. The bond brought us together. Lyra finished the sentence. Choice kept us together. They stood silently beneath the trees. Then Lyra heard something. A wolf. Far away. Then another. She smiled. They are peaceful. Kael listened. They are. Lyra's moonborn gift had changed. She no longer heard every wolf's fear. Now she heard their calm. The ancient magic that had once turned mate bonds into chains was weakening. Not because one king had conquered it. Because an entire kingdom was learning to choose differently. Lyra looked toward the castle. Do you ever miss being feared? Kael laughed. No. Why? Because being loved is harder. She smiled. Good answer. They walked back toward the castle together. This time, Lyra did not walk behind him. She walked beside him. The difference was small, but the kingdom noticed. And so did she. The reforms were not simple. Some nobles resisted. Some servants distrusted the new rules because they had been betrayed too many times before. Lyra learned that changing a system was harder than defeating one villain. She attended hearings. She listened to complaints. She made mistakes. Kael made mistakes too. Once, he announced a policy without consulting the people affected by it. Lyra challenged him publicly. He was furious for 10 minutes. Then he admitted she was right. That became a turning point. They began ruling differently. Not perfectly. Together. The kingdom slowly learned that a queen did not need to be born noble to lead. She needed courage, judgment, and the willingness to listen. Celeste became one of Lyra's strongest allies. Milo became a trusted messenger. The High Priestess created a school where young Omegas could learn about their own abilities without fear. The old mating ritual was rewritten. No family could purchase influence. No Alpha could be forced to choose. No Omega could be claimed without consent. The ritual remained sacred. But now it was also free. The first year of their partnership was harder than the ceremony. Kael learned that reform made enemies. Lyra learned that being visible meant being criticized. Some nobles called her ambitious. Some servants accused her of forgetting where she came from. She refused both labels. She remained involved in the servants' quarters. She attended council meetings. She trained her moonborn abilities. And she made mistakes. One mistake involved a reform that accidentally reduced the income of a group of rural workers. Lyra discovered it herself. She admitted the error publicly. Kael expected the nobles to attack. Instead, the workers began trusting her more. She had shown them that leadership did not mean pretending to be perfect. It meant correcting yourself. Kael learned the same lesson. When he made a decision without consulting her, she challenged him. He listened. Their kingdom did not become perfect. It became honest. That was better. The old system had been built on appearances. The new one was built on accountability. 1 year later, Lyra returned to the forest for the anniversary of the night. Everything changed. Kael followed her without guards. The ancient oak was exactly where she remembered it. She touched the bark. I used to think this tree saved me. Kael smiled. Maybe it did. No. She looked at him. I saved myself when I decided to come back. Kael nodded. That was the truth. He had recognized her scent. But he had not created her courage. She had done that. They heard wolves in the distance. Lyra closed her eyes. The old fear was gone. In its place was something peaceful. She could sense the pack bonds across the valley. No chains. No forced commands. Just connection. Kael asked, do you still hear them? Yes. What do they feel? Lyra smiled. Free. Kael took her hand. Then we did something right. She leaned against him. Something. He laughed. They started walking back toward the castle. The anniversary of the mating ritual became a day of remembrance. The silver lanterns were still lit. But the ritual had changed. Young wolves gathered with their families. The High Priestess explained that a mate bond was a gift, not a command. No one was forced to kneel. No one was forced to choose. The children listened. Lyra watched from the edge of the crowd. Kael stood beside her. Do you remember hiding here? Every detail. What do you remember most? The moment you stopped the ritual. Kael smiled. I remember your scent. Lyra laughed. I was terrified. So was I. You did not look afraid. I am very good at pretending. She leaned against him. Not anymore. No. He looked toward the young wolves. I do not want them to grow up believing fear is strength. Lyra nodded. Then we have more work to do. They returned to the castle together. The kingdom was still changing. But now the change had a direction. The story of the mating ritual eventually became a legend. People remembered the 12 noble women. They remembered the Alpha King stopping the ceremony. They remembered the servant girl in the forest. But the official histories often left out the most important part. Kael had not saved Lyra. Lyra had not saved Kael. They had saved each other by learning how to choose. Lyra became known as the Moonborn Queen, but she never allowed the title to erase her past. She kept her old gray uniform. She kept the blue stones from the river. She kept the first tiny piece of silver fabric she had torn on the night she ran through the forest. Not because she missed being invisible, because she wanted to remember how far she had come. Years later, young servants would ask her what it was like to meet the Alpha King. Lyra always gave the same answer. I did not meet the king. They would look confused. I met a man who was trying to become worthy of his crown. And did he? Lyra would smile. Ask him. Then she would look toward Kael. He would pretend not to hear. The kingdom became stronger. Not because its alpha was feared, because its people were heard. And every year, on the anniversary of the ritual, the silver lanterns were lit again. But the ceremony changed. No families could buy influence. No council could force a match. No woman or man could be claimed without consent. The bond remained sacred, personal, free. One evening, Lyra stood on the balcony with Kael. The northern forest stretched beneath the moon. I used to hide there, she said. I know. I thought no one would ever see me. Kael took her hand. I see you. She smiled. I know. He looked toward the kingdom. Do you think we changed it? Lyra considered the question. We started. He smiled. That is enough. She leaned against him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Kael whispered, Would you choose me again? Lyra looked at him. Every time. There was no command in those words. No prophecy. No magic forcing her answer. Only choice. And that was why it mattered. The Alpha King had stopped the mating ritual because of her scent. But he kept her heart because he learned to give her freedom. And the servant girl who once hid in the forest finally stepped into the light. Not because destiny demanded it, but because she had discovered something destiny could never give her. The courage to choose herself, and the freedom to choose love. The official histories eventually turned the night into a legend. But Lyra disliked the version where she was rescued by a king. That was not what happened. Kael had opened a door. She had walked through it. Celeste had told the truth. Milo had stood beside her. The high priestess had revealed the past. And Lyra had chosen not to disappear. That was the story she wanted young servants to hear. Years later, children would ask her what it felt like to be chosen by an Alpha King. She would smile. It felt frightening. They would laugh. Why? Because being chosen does not automatically mean being safe. Then she would tell them the rest. Love is safe only when both people remain free. Kael would hear her from across the hall and pretend to disagree. She would smile because she knew he did not. The kingdom became stronger because its people no longer believed obedience was the same thing as loyalty. And every year, the silver lanterns were lit. Not to decide who belonged to whom. To celebrate the freedom to choose. Years later, the story became something people told differently depending on who was listening. Nobles told the story of the Alpha King who broke tradition. Servants told the story of the girl who became queen. Healers told the story of the Moonborn. Children told the story of the scent. Lyra told a different story. She told them about choice. She explained that the most important moment was not when Kael's wolf recognized her. It was the moment Kael learned that recognition did not give him ownership. She told them that being loved was not permission for someone else to control your life. She told them that power was not measured by how many people obeyed you. And she told them that sometimes the bravest thing a person could do was stop disappearing. Whenever she finished, Kael would ask, Did you leave anything out? Lyra would smile. Only the part where you burned the bread. I was hoping that part would be forgotten. Never. Their laughter would fill the hall. The king and queen had become partners. Not because the bond made them equal, because they chose to treat each other as equals. That was the legacy they left behind. At sunrise, Lyra returned to the ancient oak one last time. She remembered the frightened servant girl who had hidden there, certain that destiny belonged to other people. Kael joined her beneath the branches. If you had to choose again, knowing everything, would you? He asked. Lyra smiled. I would choose myself first. Kael nodded. And then? She took his hand. Then I would choose you. They walked back toward the castle side by side. The kingdom would remember the night the Alpha King stopped the mating ritual because of a servant girl's scent. But Lyra remembered something more important. He had found her because of destiny. He had kept her because of trust. and she had stayed because she was free to leave. That was the bond worth protecting. At sunrise, Lyra returned to the ancient oak one final time. She remembered the frightened servant girl who had hidden there, certain that destiny belonged to other people. Kael joined her beneath the branches. If you had to choose again, knowing everything, would you? Lyra smiled. I would choose myself first. Kael nodded. And then? She took his hand. Then I would choose you. They walked back toward the castle side by side. The kingdom would remember the night the Alpha King stopped the mating ritual because of a servant girl's scent. But Lyra remembered something more important. He had found her because of destiny. He had kept her because of trust. And she had stayed because she was free to leave. That was the bond worth protecting. The strongest love was never the bond that made two people unable to walk away. It was the bond that gave them every reason to stay, and still allowed them to choose it. Lyra looked toward the castle. For 18 years, she had learned how to become invisible. Now she knew how to be seen without losing herself. She squeezed Kael's hand. Let's go home. And together, they walked into the morning. At sunrise, Lyra returned to the ancient oak one final time. She remembered the frightened servant girl who had hidden there, certain that destiny belonged to other people. Kael joined her beneath the branches. If you had to choose again, knowing everything, would you? Lyra smiled. I would choose myself first. Kael nodded. And then? She took his hand. Then I would choose you. They walked back toward the castle side by side. The kingdom would remember the night the Alpha King stopped the mating ritual because of a servant girl's scent. But Lyra remembered something more important. He had found her because of destiny. He had kept her because of trust. And she had stayed because she was free to leave. The strongest love was never the bond that made two people unable to walk away. It was the bond that gave them every reason to stay and still allowed them to choose it. For 18 years, Lyra had learned how to become invisible. Now she knew how to be seen without losing herself. She squeezed Kael's hand. Let's go home. And together, they walked into the morning.